everyone. So today we're going to learn how to divide radicals. Yesterday we did multiplying radicals. So when you have to divide radicals, you're going to start by simplifying the coefficients if you can. Then you would divide the radicals if you can, and then simplify the radicals if necessary. So the first one I have here, if I do my first step simplifying the coefficients, 12 divided by 4 would be 3. And then radical 96 divided by radical 3 would be radical 32, because I'm keeping the radical sign, and then I'm just dividing 96 by 3. So I have 3 radical 32. Now I want to determine, does 32 contain any perfect square factors? And I always want to try to find the largest. So 32, the largest perfect square factor it contains is 16. So this would be rewritten as 3 radical 16 radical 2. I take the square root of my 16, which is 4. Keep my radical 2, and then 3 times 4 would be 12 radical 2. So 12 radical 96 divided by 4 radical 3 would be 12 radical 2. So let's go do some additional problems. Example number 1, we have radical 72 divided by radical 8. So we don't have any coefficients, so now we're going to divide our radicals. So 72 divided by 8 would be radical 9, and radical 9 would be 3, because the square root of 9 is equal to 3. Example number 2, we have radical 48 divided by radical 2. So we don't have any coefficients, so we're going to start with just dividing our radicals. So radical 48 divided by radical 2 would be radical 24. And now I want to simplify radical 24. Radical 24 has a perfect square factor of 4. So I would break this down to 4 and 6. I take the square root of 4, which is 2, bring down my radical 6. So this would be 2 radical 6. Number 3. We have 3 radical 54 over 6 radical 3. So 3 can't be divided by 6 to get a whole number, but 3 and 6 can be simplified to get a half. So I'm going to keep it as a half, so that way it's a coefficient. And I don't want to work with decimals when I'm working with square roots. And then I'm going to take radical 54 divided by radical 3, and that would give me radical 18. Now I want to simplify radical 18. Radical 18 has a perfect square factor of 9, and the other factor is 2. So the square root of 9 is 3, radical 2, and then I would multiply a half by 3, which would give me 3 over 2 radical 2. And I'm going to keep it as an improper fraction. And number 4, I have radical 4/9. So 4/9 can't be divided, but what I do notice is that both 4 and 9 are perfect squares. So I'm just going to take the square root of my numerator and the denominator, because radical 4/9 is the same thing as doing radical 4 over radical 9. You can split it up, and the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. All right, so what I'd like you to do now are the practice problems, numbers 1 through 6, as best as you possibly can. And remember, when you are simplifying radicals, you want to make sure that you find the greatest perfect square factor. If you don't find the greatest, you would just have to keep simplifying your radical until there are no other perfect square factors. All right, so do the practice problems. You can write them on the paper and just snap a picture and send it to me. I think that's probably easier for most of you. And then I'll give you feedback as to how you did with it. All right, any questions, just make sure you send me a message. Have a great day.